Have you ever wondered why you can't seem to get feedback after your job interview? Well, stick around because in this video, I'm going to demystify it. Hey everybody, it's Brian from Life After Layoff, and today I want to talk about why it's so hard to get feedback after a job interview. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in more career-related content directly from a corporate recruiter, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Okay, so we've all been in this scenario before. You go through round after round of an interview process with an employer thinking that's going pretty well, and the recruiter has been very engaged with you throughout the process. They're emailing you regularly, they're calling to check up on you. Anytime you have a question, they seem to be right there with you. You go into the panel, you meet with a bunch of stakeholders, and then at the conclusion of it, they say, "Thank you for your time. We'll be back in touch shortly to let you know what the deal is." So then you go home and you eagerly wait for the dream offer that's surely going to come any day now. So then 24 hours turns into 48 hours. And now you're starting to think, well, they're probably just going in, figuring out what they're going to offer. They've got a lot of approvals to go through. There's a whole process behind the scenes that they got to go through. So I'll just give it a little bit more time. So then the third and fourth day pass where you're anxiously refreshing your screen, seeing if that new email popped in. Anytime you hear a notification on your phone, you're immediately picking it up and checking it because you're sure that an offer is coming. Then suddenly it moves into the next week and you've got this itchy trigger finger. You want to know what the heck is going on. So you debate on whether or not to pick up the phone and call the recruiter or send them a quick email. But now you're starting to wonder what's going on and what's taking so long. And then you get the dreaded email in your inbox. "Thank you for your time. Unfortunately, we've decided to go with another candidate that better fits our needs." Your heart sinks into your stomach and you're just devastated. And you sit there and you second guess, what could have possibly gone wrong? They told me that I was the perfect fit. I knew that I was a shoo-in for this job. Why did I get this rejection letter? So then you send a note to the recruiter saying, "Hi, I got your note. I'm wondering if this was a mistake. I thought that everything went really well in the interview. Can you tell me what happened?" And suddenly that recruiter who once was so on top of things and so responsive now is not responding to your emails. And maybe you pick up a phone, try calling, you leave a voicemail, and they never call you back. And it's like they have just done this to you as a candidate. And you scratch your defeated head and say, "I wish they could have just told me what I did wrong or why they went with another candidate." Now, I know just about all of us have been in this scenario before. It happens to every single job seeker, and it's not just you. And the fact that companies are so reluctant to give this feedback to job seekers can be infuriating because that feedback can be very beneficial to somebody who uses it constructively to help them try to apply it to their next interview so that if they did make a mistake, that they wouldn't continue to do it over and over again. So the question is why are recruiters, and I would say as a bigger extension, companies, so reluctant to give feedback to candidates who didn't make it through the interview process? And there's a major reason why. And it really boils down to liability. And let me give you a scenario because this has actually happened to me personally. So I had a candidate who was going through an interview process with us. At the end of that interview process, there was another candidate that came in that just happened to be a better fit. And it wasn't that this candidate interviewed poorly, but there was another candidate that came in and sold a certain aspect of the job a little bit better. And ultimately, the hiring manager decided to go with candidate B. Now, candidate A had already assumed that he had it in the bag, and that's probably his first mistake, is that he just assumed. And he was already mentally preparing himself to take this job. In fact, he even called me and started asking me logistical details about relocation and what neighborhoods he should be considering. And so I had to pump the brakes a little bit with him and say, "Hey, actually, we're still interviewing. We haven't made any decisions yet. We will let you know within the next week or so." Long story short is we hired the other candidate and I had to give him the bad news. And so he got a rejection letter. Then, of course, he proceeds to contact me immediately and ask me if this was a mistake and what the heck is going on. And he knew he had this one in the bag. And he was pretty upset at this point, understandably so. And he asked for some feedback. Why did they choose another candidate? Why didn't they choose me? And I decided to give him a little bit of constructive feedback. It wasn't that you did poorly. It's that this other candidate had more experience and was able to more clearly sell this particular component of the job. And the guy just went off on me. And he started telling me that That's not true at all. I have a lot of experience here and they didn't even ask me. And he starts throwing the hiring manager under the bus. That hiring manager never even said this. And he led me down the wrong path. And if I would have known that that was important to him, and he didn't even and he just was going on. And I'm just talking about, And he made such a huge commotion that I told him, sir, I have to hang up on you now. I can no longer engage this. So then the candidate starts going and contacting all the people on the interview panels. And in fact, the hiring manager did give him some feedback on why he wasn't selected. And the guy didn't like it at all. Basically told the hiring manager that he didn't know what he was doing. He went off on him and he just completely lost his stuff. And the next thing I know, emails are flying all over the place about this guy. I have the hiring manager contacting me saying, can you get rid of this guy? He's being absolutely unprofessional. It actually got to the point where our legal team had to step in and do damage control with this guy and basically cease and desist with him. So obviously this story is an extreme example, and that hasn't happened very frequently in my career, but nonetheless, there is a liability that a company opens themselves up to if they provide feedback, especially if the candidate can't handle the feedback that they're gonna get. And as a result of all this, especially with legal getting involved, the talent acquisition department came up with a new rule that nobody would give any specific feedback to candidates because of this exact issue, and that there was too much liability associated with it. So it really does put a company in between a rock and a hard place, trying to decide when to give feedback and when not to give feedback. Obviously, it's not very helpful for the job seeker who is trying to improve themselves and trying to understand and calibrate for future roles. So if it was me, I would be reaching out to the recruiter and saying, hey, I got the note that you're going to be going with another candidate, and while disappointing, I'm actively interviewing, so any feedback that I can get that can help me land a future job would be really appreciated. Is there any feedback that you can give me to improve my interview skills? Because now the way that you're framing it is non-threatening to the recruiter. They could potentially give you some little nugget of wisdom, but they're probably still not going to give you a ton. But any feedback you get is better than none, and it's always a great data point to have in your back pocket. But if you're somebody that is struggling in your job search and you are looking for a little bit more targeted help, that is actually something that I specialize in. I do have a website called alifeafterlayoff.com. It's loaded with tips and tricks, all from an insider's perspective. And I do share my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of training courses. The first one is called Resume Rocketfuel, and it is designed to teach you how to write a targeted resume that is going to give you the best chance of getting noticed by those recruiters to get into that first round interview process. The nice thing about it is it's not just how to write a resume, but it's actually how to write a resume and then use it strategically to get the best possible result. So if you're somebody that's struggling with getting those initial interviews, I highly recommend that you check that one out, because it's usually a resume issue. If you're applying for a job after job, assuming you're reasonably qualified for those roles and you're just not getting a lot of phone calls. But once you get that first round interview, that's then up to you to sell yourself throughout the rest of the interviewing process. And that's where the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. So it's going to give you those tips and tools and techniques to feel very confident that you could land that dream offer. And that's, of course, the end goal. We help you figure out how to negotiate it. And usually we can get the money back for all this investment in these courses through some good negotiation techniques that I teach you in those courses. And ideally, if you want to skip the application process altogether, try to get right into the interviewing process, the best way to do that is to have recruiters come and find you versus trying to get noticed by applying to jobs. That course, Unlocking LinkedIn, will teach you how to leverage that tool to have recruiters start to notice you, and more importantly, how to skip the traditional interviewing process and jump right to the front of the line. And I do offer some private one-on-one coaching if you do need a little bit more targeted help for your individual situation, and you can reach me through my website for that. Hopefully this helps give you just a little bit more insight into why companies behave the way that they do. It's not an excuse for them, but it is simply just giving you insight. But as always, happy that you watched this video, and we will see you on the next one.